IREN doubled their GPU fleet size this week, and they also upped their ARR target to $500 million. IREN bulls have been on a bit of a victory lap on Twitter this week for sure, as their stock price actually broke over $50 per share. Colin?
Not too terribly much to add to this, other than just like IREN obviously impressively increasing their GPU capacity. We've got roughly 23,000 GPUs now. They're looking at a targeted annualized run rate of 500 million by the end of Q1 2026. The order that they most recently placed to basically double their GPU size was for 12,400 GPUs from Nvidia. They're going to host these in their Prince George facility in Canada, and they have a bunch of other ambitions with their AI and HPC business line. They're trying to develop the Sweetwater site in Texas, which looks like it might be a PowerShell model looking for a tenant. But right now, they've been going fully with the kind of neo-cloud GPU cluster model, where they're really the only sizable Bitcoin miner operating, I would say, pretty reputable fleet at this point. Hive's got a small cluster, but IREN has really broken away from the pack there in terms of their ability to operate these things. So,
you actually brought up a few good, interesting subjects within that. One, I think I got 2 points first, and then I'm going to bring up one of the things you brought up because it's interesting to discuss. One, so they purchased Nvidia. I don't know. Matt Williams made fun of me last week for that, so I don't know how to say it anymore. But they purchased those chips again, but they also purchased from AMD. And that kind of came out during the week as like, hey, why are they doing this? Why are they shifting out of this? If they had just gone to one of NVIDIA's partner programs, that was like notable that they're going to be part of that. That gave them, I believe, access to better financing. But, they're also buying these AMD. I think for IREN, they're going the route of trying to be like a generalist platform, it seems, for anyone who wants to purchase compute. And they're also diversifying their supply. Maybe that matters. Maybe it doesn't. It speaks to you. That's great. But I think that's just one thing I saw this week. Another point that's interesting to me is just looking at the expected ARR. So looking at the document, that's 500 million by the end of Q1 2026. So that's where they're expected to get to for the run rate. And I think it's just good to benchmark against, say, a competitor like CoreWeave. And they did $1.2 billion in revenue for Q2. And then from Q2 2024, they were at 400 million in revenue. And that's just for the quarter, right? So like there is a sizable difference between these companies. As great as IREN is looking right now, like CoreWeave has a lot more under management and is already delivering these loads. So IREN, if you do believe that they're going to be able to get all the Sweetwater campuses plugged in one day, Canal Flats and some of the other locations, like there's still a lot of capacity to fill in and potentially a lot of revenue. It just depends on like if this AI narrative actually comes to fruition, which like all the bank analysts and all the CEOs and Zuckerberg are predicting like huge numbers. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about when we're looking at like the huge price targets we've seen this week, $80, $100 for IREN. And if they do build out aggressively into those things, it's interesting. Last point before I have one other thing to tell you, Colin, is like the funding on this. I'm really curious about like how they're funding all these obligations. I haven't seen a lot of info. I saw one thing which I don't think I had like a link or anything back to it, so I can't like necessarily say like with complete sincerity if it's true or not. But my understanding is like the interest rates on some of these things are getting into like the high 9s or even higher. And so these things are not being purchased with cash like they did with the last set, right? They had a convertible note for like 500 million and they purchased some GPUs. These ones seem to be going through financing programs, which is awesome. And a lot of these GPU clusters have been built through financing. But it does make me pause for a second when you have this emerging neo cloud that is also gobbling up all these clusters and paying for things on financing. If there's any problems, that financing bill is still due. And these GPUs, like the revenue over time degrades pretty quickly. Like they normally get good 3 years out of it. But for the pricing cycle to be done correctly, you really need to get them in as quickly as possible. Okay, last thing I want to point out is what you said about Hive. It's interesting to think about like who's going to be like big and then who's going to be like profitable and lucrative. And Hive did sign a nice deal with Bell up in Canada. And my understanding is that's like one of the larger broadband networks up there. They're also doing a lot of AI for the Canadian government. And so like those deals might be more lucrative, even though it only amounts to, a dozen megawatts or something like that, versus an IREN, which is obviously going huge and trying to get as much scale and as big as possible. Any thoughts on all that? That was a lot. I rambled.
Man, we'll save some analysis for the rest of us. No, that was
I was
great.
excited.
IREN is, I think they're the biggest public listed Bitcoin miner by market cap. They're one of the fastest growing AI cloud companies. I mean, they're hip. They got to be hip amongst the banking analysts. I'm not going to dissect it from any more angles than you already did. I think you covered it well. But yeah, I think they're really making a push, right? They're making a push. You brought up CoreWeave, right? But I think what's interesting here, and I'm not as in the weeds as you guys and some other analysts that are really observing the AI industry, but CoreWeave has been, as you said, they're already operational. They've been doing this for a while. IREN's coming in and buying GPUs that are the latest models, right? Like, what is the efficiency difference among these machines, and how much does that matter to those that are coming in and wanting workloads? That's an interesting question I'd like to know about, and how that squares on a unit economics basis, and they're getting an ROI on their CapEx.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the episodes we put out. Also, check us out on Spotify, Apple, and elsewhere.